This program is brought to you by SAMCEDA, the San Mateo County Economic Development Association.
Hi, I'm Rosanne Foust. I'm the president and CEO of SAMCEDA, and welcome to More Than the Bottom Line. Why should you invest the next 20 or 30 minutes of your time in watching? Have you ever considered or wondered about the people and purpose behind various businesses on the Peninsula and Silicon Valley? Who works there? Why? What do these companies and organizations really contribute to our communities? If you are even a little bit curious, take a moment and hear their stories and why business is more than the bottom line. For 7 decades, the San Mateo County Economic Development Association, better known as SAMCEDA, has championed the business community by convening and connecting them to the communities in which they make their home. People hear about Genentech and Oracle, but do they know about Design Tech High School and Future Labs? My guess is no, but even if you have, we are going to tell these stories and many more. The stories of your friends and neighbors who work there, and how they contribute and collaborate through their employers with our food banks, our schools, our youth sports teams, our art and cultural groups, our veterans and seniors. How their companies give back and believe in more than the bottom line. On today's episode, we have Donnelly with Embarcadero Capital Partners and Patty McGuigan with Cornish and Carey, Newmark, Knight and Frank. We'll be right back. Welcome back to More Than the Bottom Line. With me today is Patty McGuigan with Cornish and Carey, Newmark, Knight and Frank, and Donnelly with Embarcadero Capital Partners. Welcome.
Thank you, Rosanne.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
So today is a conversation, and it's a conversation about women in the commercial real estate field. Both of you are very successful, very accomplished. You've done a lot in your career. So what I'd like you to do is share with the audience your backgrounds. Carol, would you like to start?
Sure. So I started out as a property manager back in the day, back in the late 80s, not to date myself too much, but I started in San Francisco. I was managing commercial properties, and I got introduced to the leasing world and the marketing world. And so one day I was looking through the want ads, actually newspaper, the old want ads, and I saw a position for a marketing manager down at McCandless Management Corporation. And I'm looking at Patty because that's where I met Patty. So somehow I got the job there. I'd never leased a square inch of space in my life, but they liked me and I liked them, and it all worked out. And that kind of segued into my career of getting on the leasing side of the commercial real estate world. So from there I went to William Wilson and Associates, and then Equity Office, and now of course I'm at Embarcadero. So that's kind of a synopsis, Reader's Digest version.
That's great. And Patty, will you share?
Okay. So I'm going to share. God didn't give me a lot of hours in my life, but I got a lot of 15-second things. So I have these quotations that kind of capture it. And I love this one. If you ask me where I came into this life to do, I would tell you I came to live out loud. And I think everyone that knows me would agree with that. So I'm Southern California, California bred, 100% Irish. And I grew up in the day where you could be a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. I couldn't type, still can't. I didn't like my mother was a nurse and I hated her hours, so I ended up as a teacher, and I spent 13 years of my life working for the LA City school systems, and a good share of that was in East LA teaching high school. I loved teaching. It was fabulous.
Did you teach all subjects? Or?
No, I was a high school teacher, so I only taught English. But within that English, I taught speech. I was the drama teacher. I taught English as a second language. So there was tremendous variety in a quasi-East LA school. So then my life got turned upside down, and I'd gotten a divorce, and I had 2 children that I had to support, and I needed to get a man's job with a man's salary. And I have one of my quotations that I always use, and I send it out to children that are graduating from school or women that are widows suddenly or divorced. What are you going to do with this precious thing you have called life? And so I had to decide at that point what I was going to do. So I had a wonderful priest who came out of church, and I was devastated. And he said, he says, where would you like to live? And I said, I love the Bay Area. I love it. He said, why don't you go there then? And he said to me, an opportunity is an inconvenience well received. And that has been the tenet upon which I've led my life. So I came up here, San Francisco, didn't know anybody, no internet, and I sent a note to every single person on my Christmas list. Anybody that had ever met me got a note, said, who do you know in the Bay Area? Who do you know? So I turned it into a real job because I couldn't type, but I could talk, and I was loud. So I just went out and did massive, massive marketing for Patty McGuigan. And with that, I found a job with Exxon. I still get my gas at Exxon if I can, because they gave me the opportunity to work for Quip Systems, which is a facsimile machine that in the day was brand new, you know, faxes. And I had a territory. There were 20 offices. They gave me sales lessons. I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. It was a walking MBA. And I learned that if no one sells something, a terrible thing happens. Nothing. And I fell in love with sales. And that's very little different from selling a facsimile or leasing a product. You just are interacting constantly, meeting someone who thought they were comfortable. You give them an idea, it makes them kind of uncomfortable, but then you give them a solution so they can get comfortable again. And that's what sales is.
That's what real estate is too.
Right. So I have been doing real estate now. So I did that for 3 years. In that process, I gotten remarried. My children were now at the age that I was looking at, high school. And I'd come to the conclusion that number one, I didn't want to move. I loved the Bay Area. I didn't want to travel with work. I was a mother. Number two, I didn't want to go up a corporate line. I had enough on running a house, raising my kids. My husband was that was enough. And I didn't want to sell I just needed money. If this man could live with me and these 2 kids, that was enough. He didn't have to support us. I could do that. I needed to make money. And the other thing I decided is I never again wanted to sell anything with a moving part.
So I'd love to hear, Carol, when you met Patty in the commercial real estate, how did this all work?
Well, I think we were in an elevator. I don't know if you remember, but I actually remember. She's hard to forget, I mean, so we were in an elevator, and we were in McCandless Tower down in Santa Clara, which is this beautiful building. And at that time, it was one of the only big tall buildings back in the day.
And it still is one of them.
Yes, one of the premier buildings in Santa Clara. Now it's got a twin tower. And we met, and she was leasing real estate for us. She was one of our listing agents. And we met then, and we just hit it off, and we have been in touch ever since. So throughout my various jobs, I mean, she's been at Cornish and Carey the whole time. But I've obviously moved around a little bit. We've stayed in touch, and we've had a great relationship. And we still work together very closely on a number of projects here in the Bay Area. So we can
finish each other's sentences, which is really wonderful.
And we bring different strengths to the transaction.
So I would love for you to talk about the strengths that you bring to the transaction and the strengths that women bring to the business community. And I'd love for you to touch on. So More Than the Bottom Line was conceived because we wanted to talk about how business and the individuals that work for business give back to the community. Sure. So I'd love for you to weave some stories into your remarks.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being women in real estate or in working in general, there's always a balance, right? There's always the balance. There's the home life, there's what you do outside of the home life, and then there's the business life too. So it's a constant balance, and how do you mesh those together and give back to the community? I've found what I've done in my personal life is I have two daughters. It's very important to me that they're active as well. We're part of an organization called National Charity League, which is big in this area. And it's a way that my girls and myself can volunteer together on a variety of things, not necessarily commercial real estate, but all different types of
different nonprofits.
Different nonprofits, yes, throughout the area. So, you know, that along with the school, my kids go to public schools. I'm very involved in the school, you know, and sports teams and that kind of thing as well.
And Patty, you've seen, I mean, you were raising 2 children on your own. You came to a new area. You said before you had to sell Patty McGuigan, but really it was networking. I mean, you networked like crazy to make connections. And when you first went into commercial real estate, I mean, commercial real estate is known as a man's world.
It is, absolutely.
It is. Fortunately, it still is a little bit, but not quite as much. But
so how did you bridge that?
When I left, I learned when I was selling Exxon that I really liked the business world. I really liked a buy, sell, make an account environment. I liked that. And I'm not shy. I'm not afraid of many people. I think my 2 strengths are I have a faucet of energy that's endless, and I'm very enthusiastic about anything I do. So I could take those 2 things. I'm smart, and I'm aggressive. Assertive, I should say.
Assertive.
And with real estate, you're just plopped right into the middle of the community. You really are. And so knowing people in the community, I have certain rules, and I tell women this all the time. I say, anytime you go into a room, talk to 5 people you never met before. Make sure you talk to 5 people.
That's a really good one.
And then, you know, so what have I done? You know, I have always had one segment of my life I was on the Triton Museum, and then I was the San Jose Art Museum, and then I was on the Palo Alto Art Center for a number of years, and then I was on the Stanford Children's Hospital, and then now we're big Michigan State. Priory I've done things for. I'm involved in Castellia's things, and today I'm on the I'm on the board of the Palo Alto Downtown Committee. So I'm plopped right in the middle of lots of people doing lots of things in the community.
And how does that work with your fellow brokers? So you're constantly, it's deal after deal after deal.
Yep.
So how did they react to your style? But Carol,
well,
I mean,
Patty and I have very different styles, but I think we both bring different strengths to the table. And
tell us what you see those as being.
I'm a listener. I tend to listen. I tend to take it in, and can be very patient with whomever I'm dealing with, because a lot of times we get these crazy requests or deals that we're looking at. We just finished one that we probably don't even want to talk about. It was just too crazy. But you know, just in terms of patience is a strength I think I definitely bring to the table, and the listening part, really hearing what the other folks need, you know, as part of the transaction to get in. I think that's a different skill set than some people do bring to it. I don't mean to say that it's a female thing versus a male thing, but it is to a certain extent.
And
it is, and
very
I'm gonna
organized.
I love that.
Very
I'm going to pause you.
Okay.
We're going to take a short break. This is Rosanne Foust with More Than the Bottom Line. Hi, this is Rosanne Foust. Welcome back to More Than the Bottom Line. With me today are 2 fantastic businesswomen here on the Peninsula. We have Patty McGuigan with Cornish and Carey, Newmark, Knight and Frank, and Carol Donnelly with Embarcadero Capital Partners. We were having a robust discussion prior to the break, and we're going to get back to it. And Patty is going to give us some insights into what her characteristics are and how they work in the commercial real estate field, and kind of how it's a little different than Carol's. And just tell us, Patty.
Well, Carol is one of 4 partners in her group, so there's an organization in her partners. And one of the grand things I think Carol does is that she manages these 3 men. They don't know it particularly, but they are professional businessmen running an organization. My world is much more like the NFL. There are no rules, however. And so, you know, a deal, anyone can go after some. I mean, it really is.
It's a free-for-all.
It is a free-for-all.
Yes.
So what qualities do I bring? Well, first of all, you know, I am very much of an individual. I have this energy. I'm not threatened by any of them, and they know I'm not threatened by any of them. And I think I'm very creative in a deal.
Very creative.
There is really very few ways. I mean, Carol and I have done some amazing things going on to get something done where people sit back and say, I can't.
Well, and we've worked on some really strange buildings as well. Where one of Patty's lines that I love, one of her quotes, is basically, if you can't hide it, flaunt it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a good one.
Okay, I love it. If you can't hide it, flaunt it.
Yeah, all of a sudden that beam that's right in the middle of that space becomes some beautiful architectural feature. There's things like that she's always coming up with these. They're not crazy ideas, they're really good ideas.
They're Pattyisms.
Yeah.
Pattyisms.
So let me
there
give you
go.
one.
Clearly we've got a whole bunch of Pattyisms right
I
here.
love it.
This is a deal when you ask us, a deal that we had done. So this is our deal that we had done. I had been hired to sell the Christian Science Church in downtown Palo Alto. And while it didn't look like a church, it had a very unique architecture, had been there since 1960, and today I'm an expert on Mary Baker Eddy. I got the listing from them, and I then had to sell it. And this was in 2009. Ooh. So remember, 2009 was not 2019.
No.
So, and commercial real estate in 2009 was like over 20% vacancy.
Even in downtown Palo Alto, which is crazy to think about. It was terrible market.
Wow.
Terrible.
So I had this. I had been given
sells the church, and who'd you sell it to?
So I sold it to Embarcadero Capital, and so John had. I mean, it was not easy to get him down the altar, and he had made his deposit, but it hadn't closed, and Lehman's collapsed, and I'm going to work thinking. Okay, what else can happen? Because everybody's a little nervous about that. It was right by Halloween, so I got online. I'm a product of an Irish, Catholic school. There we are, and so I get online and order a nun's outfit. And I get a picture of this church, and on the apron of the building of the church, I put, instead of Christian Science Church of Christ, I have Embarcadero Capital Partners. And I go to Baskin Robbins, and I get this cake made, big, large cake, with this picture on the cake. And then I got Martinelli's and champagne, and I put on my nun costume on. And I went into your offices. Mm-hmm. I called to make sure everybody was going to be there. And I walked in, and I said, I'm here. I said, it's a party. We're celebrating John's new building. I said, come on to the conference room. Let's have some cake and such. So how could John not buy that building? I mean, everybody had cake.
Do you remember his reaction, Carol? So,
he thinks she's hilarious. So, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he was dumbfounded, but we all were a little bit. But, it was great.
Worked.
It really worked. It was funny.
I think he was going to buy it, but it helped. It definitely was a good.
And it was creative.
Yeah, it was very creative. And yes, we still talk about it to this day. And it turned out to be a very successful project for us.
And he
very
said,
successful.
I didn't buy this building. She sold it to me.
That's true, actually. That is true.
Now, that's a very different way to look at it. And she sold it to me versus I bought it.
Yeah.
No man would have ever done that.
Yeah.
What advice would both of you give to young women today coming in? Because a clear path to commercial real estate out of college isn't quite there.
No, it's not.
So if you were mentoring.
It could be there. It could be there. I mean, there are jobs that even going to work at a brokerage firm, you can come in as a junior person. In my institutional background, it's more kind of coming in as maybe an assistant, maybe as a property manager. But these are all good ways to learn about the industry because they're all kind of avenues to do what we do. And there's no science to it, right? It's not.
Your days are never the same.
No.
Which I would
like. Yeah, which is what I enjoy, and that's why I've stayed with it. Frankly, that's why I took a small time off when I had my kids, but I came back to work because I missed it. I like what I do.
Well, the appealing side of having a day where you're learning something new.
Yeah.
I don't think there must be a day that goes by that either of you don't learn something new.
Oh, yeah, we learn all kinds of things.
And kind of the challenges that you face in this market. But share with the audience, and I want to hear this too, is your mentoring side. Because both of you mentor. You have daughters, you have people, other colleagues within the industry. I mean, Patty, you and I were talking before the show about there's 12 women at your firm out of 400. That is not a large amount. So what do you talk about when you're together? And Carol, how does it all work?
Well, I mean, I would say that it's more trying to share, for me, the day-to-day activities of what I'm doing in my world. So, for instance, we've got a meeting coming up where there's going to be our principals will all be at the meeting. We're talking with brokers about a project that we're going to buy, hopefully, and we're going to get a lot of information. So I've invited our new leasing assistant to join us because I think it'd be great for her to kind of start learning a bit more and figuring out what we do exactly, because she's pretty new to the industry. So things like that where we try, and John does a really good job of it too, in terms of bringing folks into these situations that doesn't fit their job description, but we're a very small firm, we're very, flat, so everyone does a little bit of everything, so we really try to bring, and it's not just women, it's men too, the younger men we try to bring up too, especially we've got construction managers that have done a fabulous job and have really kind of moved through the organization. So from that standpoint, and even working with the younger brokers, we do a lot of that. Brokers that maybe just don't have the deal experience, but we can kind of see that they do, and helping them walk through a deal. I might be on the other side of where they are. We're working, one's representing someone and I'm representing the building, but it's a way of kind of coming together and coaching to a certain extent. Because we all want the same outcome, right? It's not necessarily, who's going to get the last nickel or whatever. It's how do we figure out this tenant moving into this building and making them happy and you happy and us happy. I mean, it's that simple.
How do we craft a successful deal?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you craft a successful relationship? How do you craft?
Because these relationships go on, and I think that's the other thing we see. I mean, people come out of the woodwork, that you haven't seen in years, but they're still doing, they'll call you up and all of a sudden they've got a tenant that's looking at your project and it's like, oh my gosh, remember when we did that, deal back at McCandless in 1992 or something. So
see, the whole concept of, and everything that we've been talking about is really business wants to make a profit. Yeah. It does.
Yep.
And
of course.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But there's so many different facets to making a profit, to giving back to your community.
Yes.
And I'd love, as we're wrapping up our segment today, for both of you to kind of share some additional quotes, thoughts, just how people should really look at the business community, look at women in business, and look at us as all we're part of the same ecosystem.
Yes.
It's not just business or just government or just nonprofits.
Right. Exactly.
So share some thoughts.
You want to take a stab at that?
So in my business, I really, in mentoring, young women, I always have a team. I always have a team because that way you can see more people, you can do more things, you move your risk around and such, and you share ideas, and one person will come up with one thing and then you'll butterflies into something else. So I do that. When I moved from the Santa Clara office to Palo Alto, and I remember telling the manager, I said to him, I intend to do a deal with every single person in this office because I wanted to know each person's strengths and weaknesses. And so as I found more business, this person was good at that and that person was good at this one. I think, and one of the things I always tell the women, this is harder for you, but that's all right because you're smarter than they are. And that is the absolute gospel truth. I mean, women just do, and it's just better in the sales process, than men do. Men have a larger ego that they have to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Check the ego at the door throughout all of this, and you don't need to bring that into any of this. And it's hard. I mean, sometimes we all do it. We all do it, but that's not what the end result needs to be, and I think that's how we can be more effective in selling what we need to sell is you check the ego, you listen to people, and you just move forward. And it's a real relationship business too. So
the only thing that I have is time and knowledge and experience. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah.
There's no quip in my briefcase today. It's just time and experience.
And I think you would say too, throughout your career, there's probably nobody that would say, I'm never going to work with Patty. I mean, I think you've got a great following. People really enjoy you. And I feel like I can say the same thing. So I think at the end of the day, that's what matters.
And to keep a sense of humor with it going.
Oh, yeah, you have
this
to.
is not the end of the world.
No, I mean,
this isn't really going to
cure cancer.
I mean, we've said that a lot. It's really, let's keep it in perspective. Your community, your children,
keep the
your
balance.
own self.
Right.
Is
your relationships, how you communicate.
Right.
This has been such a fabulous time together, I think, and I hope you feel the same.
It's always good to spend time with you, Rosanne.
Well, I'm just grateful that you wanted to come on More Than the Bottom Line, that you wanted to share your experiences. You're in a very unique field. Commercial real estate is unique.
Yeah.
And to have two dynamic, smart, funny, capable women and colleagues join me today, I am so happy. This is Rosanne Foust on More Than the Bottom Line. Thank you. On today's segment of Guess the Company, we have a company that was founded in 1977 under the name Software Development Laboratories. One of the three founders took inspiration from the 1970 paper written by Edgar F. Codd on relational database management systems. This company offered the first structured query language, better known as SQL, in 1979. And this company acquired Sun Microsystems in January of 2010. And the company is Oracle, located in Redwood City on the former site of Marine World Africa, USA. In 2018, Oracle was the third largest software maker by revenue after Microsoft and Alphabet. Oracle founded the Oracle Education Foundation in 2000. Their first donations revolved around hardware and software grants to underserved communities. Then they moved on to a decade-long ThinkQuest challenge, online learning platform and annual competition. And then today, they have technology and design thinking classes and internships. Oracle also has built, with private financing, Design Tech High School. It is a publicly chartered high school on the Oracle campus for 550 students. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of More Than the Bottom Line.
This program is brought to you by SAMCEDA, the San Mateo County Economic Development Association.